are doing is we're very actively working on seasonal item allocation and replenishment and vendor replenishment of year-round product.
Right. And so all the areas in green are actually places that we've moved on to actually working on rolling out solutions at Crate and Barrel. And the one area that's in white, it's initial buying for seasonal goods, is something that we've actually left for last because it's actually probably one of the hardest things to do, not just analytically, but it's really particularly hard culturally. And so we're actually going to focus on the areas in green, and then probably later this year, sometime next year, we'll start to be working on that last area with Crate. So.
And excitement. Well, I can tell you that the executive team is excited about getting another 3 to 6 month payback on other components of the product life cycle. I think there is also excitement in both merchandising and the stores about having some tools.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that you shared with me the other day, Ed, was that some of the insights of how to look at the business that are coming out of this are ones that have caused people to say, wow, we're really learning a lot about how our business operates that we really didn't understand in the level of detail that we do now. And that's making the company, in many, many ways, much stronger at its ability to deliver products to the customer's hands.
And I think there's also a excitement about, with that understanding, that we can support continued growth.
Right. And then our final slide is actually a little bit of a transition because we were talking a little bit about what 4R and Crate have been partnering on doing to help Crate really put in a next generation of solutions for its supply chain. And I think one of the things that we've seen as a method, if you want to say how can you profit optimize your inventory, is that the method that we seem to believe works well is that this benchmark that we talked about where you take past data, 2 or 3 years worth of data, can allow you to measure the size of profit or opportunity with a fast and low-cost analysis of past data. You can identify where that product comes from in the product life cycle, where the profit comes from, and quickly build a business and ROI case. And then the doing it part of it actually comes, as we've seen at Crate and other clients that we have, is that actually putting better fuel into your existing infrastructure and upgrading that infrastructure is both fast to do, it generates a high return, and it really reduces risk dramatically because we don't have to rip up the infrastructure to put in a new system. And so I know, Ed, I think you're feeling on this approach.
Well, in fact, I think for us this was exactly the right thing to do. I think there was always that hesitation initially on doing benchmarking, taking the time, the expenditure. What is that going to prove? I think if you're doing a good benchmark, what comes out of it are some ahas that basically pay for the benchmark itself and, potentially give you a lot more. For us, in terms of upgrade versus replace, well, we have certainly at times done whole replacements of systems. That, again, introduces more risk. So we're not opposed to replacing where there's a need, but would certainly prefer the more conservative upgrade.
So, Ken?
Yes, thank you very much. We have accumulated a number of questions from our online audience, and we have about 10 minutes or so here at the end of the presentation to attack those. And I'll just begin with question number 1. Crate and Barrel completed the rollout of the 4R tools chain-wide in time for the 2005 holiday season. This means you have a good 6-month history under your belt now. What improvements have you experienced chain-wide, and does the use of analytics continue to yield new or perhaps unexpected benefits? Ed, you kind of touched on that in a previous slide, but can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, I think from a purely financial standpoint, what I said before, I think is kind of the key point there. We, without getting into the specifics of the improved sales and reduction in lost sales, we have effectively seen a 3 to 6 month payback on the investment. I think maybe one of the surprising things or that's becoming, I think, more apparent is how important it is to minimize lost sales. It's kind of that. It may just be a small fraction. But it's a customer that came in that was disappointed because you weren't in stock and they told 9 friends. And I think, that's almost the investment in the future of, be in stock in the right items, please the customer, and I think the impact on future sales and what we're seeing in 2006 is very positive.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, is there anything you'd like to add on to that, or?
Yeah, no, I think that over the time, there's 2 things that have happened. One is, given the way Crate and Barrel operated before, the way they were, we added capabilities that increased that performance. And I think what we've seen is a certain resonance. Now that we've increased the performance of that, and I think Ed alluded to it with the sales staff's confidence, for example, we're starting to see secondary effects where actually the underlying performance of other areas of the company is starting to actually take advantage of the fact that we're holding, more profitable levels of inventory, better in stock. So there's this kind of positive resonance, which is we get better in stocks, and it drives the salespeople and other activities to drive better sales, and then we actually track that higher sales rate and drive more in stocks. So there's a real nice positive resonance happening.
Mm-hmm. Another question from our live audience is question number 2. What is the latest feedback you are hearing from your store managers, your buyers, and your internal IT department? That would be directed at you, Ed.
The store manager feedback is very positive. As I said, we did hold a focus group, and they are anxious. They want the other components. I think the interesting thing is, where we went in and, with, say, great precision on year-round product for seasonal, they seem more willing just to take numbers that are a little less perfect. Now, we're not going to compromise, but there's just that much excitement to get the tools. There's a lot of, I think, excitement in the merchandising department. There's also, I think we're trying to sort of figure out how we can implement this in kind of the same way that we did at the stores without, creating major change and, say, retraining of process. So I think there's probably a little bit of concern on the merchandising side in that regard. In terms of IT, frankly, we are starting to really marry this into some whole strategic themes for the company and involve more groups.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about starting at the store level, and we talked about that earlier, is that you actually can really see the impact of it because, in a weird kind of way, you can say that the cash register is a pretty good data point. And so I think we saw some very good things happening there, and it's very easy to do it. As you move up the supply chain and you start to optimize other decisions up the supply chain, you get further and further away from that cash register. So it becomes much trickier to really measure those impacts. We actually can do that, but as Ed was referring to the merchants, for example, when they're saying, I want to place a buy on an item that I'm bringing in, those decisions impact profitability dramatically, but they're very distant in both time and location from the decision's ultimate impact. And so working with the merchants so that they feel connected to how we're understanding that so that they actually can be invested in those recommendations and implement them as strongly as the store managers have is part of the cultural opportunity and challenge that we're looking at right now.
Another question from our live audience is, again, directed at you, Ed. And the question is, would you expect that in most chain store retailers, the CIO would be the person driving and managing the inventory cost and customer satisfaction issue? This reader seems to think they would have thought that it would be the CFO or someone in sales or store operations. Can you talk about who drives the system?
I think in terms of driving this, I think to also get into the culture a little bit here, we do an awful lot by consensus. So I think, we have a VP of merchandising, a VP of store ops, supply chain. We all work very closely together, and I think as a unit have really worked to drive this.
Yeah, if I can make a comment here on that, which is because we work very closely with Ed, and Ed has been a champion of this here at Crate and Barrel. But beyond that, the reason why he's probably talking here more than anything else is not because other executives in other parts of the organization haven't been connected. In fact, the supply chain side has been, the stores have, the head of stores has been involved. Gordon, I think, as the founder and CEO, has a very active interest in what we're doing here. But it's the IT area, Ed's area, that was actually more day in, day out in getting it done,
right,
and implementing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think also we have, I think, in terms of the IT department here, it's a very active IT department. I think there's a lot of organizations where there are, operational people that come up with, solutions that give them off to IT. But the way it works here is we tend to work with the operational group in discussing what the problems are. We work with them in developing the solutions. And, I can say we have 140 people in the IT department. 10-15%, actually closer to the 15%, came out of operational positions within the organization.
Mm-hmm. If I can add, actually, Ed had referred to the functional architect that was involved, and Beth actually, had run a store. She'd been involved in the store side. She'd been in the merchandising side. And what Crate has is people that have line experience in the business sitting inside the IT area so that they bring that resident knowledge to bear. The other point that I'd make, too, is that what we do is very holistic. In other words, by doing an optimization, we're trying to balance out, customer service and cost and profitability. And so it's actually very important that the entire organization sees it's working. Because what happens all too often around these kinds of problems is you might do something to set store inventories, and the store people love it because it helps the stores. But the supply chain people think it's terrible because it's very difficult for them to manage. It's very costly. They're holding tons of inventory, not in the store, but back in the chain. The CFO might not think it's very, very good. The merchants might not think it's good. Or there might be a solution that the merchants really, really like, but the stores find is very disagreeable. One of the things that's interesting when you try and manage your business holistically is that it's very important that you make all of those constituencies happy and they understand the trade-offs that are involved between their different areas. And I think one of the things that we've really been able to do here at Crate is that this has been an effort where we've touched the entire company and to great positive effect. I mean, the feedback from all quarters has been very, very consistently good and strong and very upbeat on what we're doing.
Another question we'd like to slip in. Did you end up changing the physical delivery time to the stores as part of this effort, or did that remain constant?